Hi, everyone. My name is Savannah Petrick. I am the Curatorial Assistant and Publications Coordinator at the Parish Art Museum, and I'm very happy to be joining Jackie Black in conversation this evening. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors. The museum's year-round Friday night programs are made possible by the generosity of our presenting sponsor, Bank of America, and with additional support from Sandy and Stephen Perlbinder. I'd also like to remind everyone that the museum is open Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays, and you may visit our website to purchase your timed admission ticket. Lastly, if you have any questions, any comments, please just utilize the Q&A feature and drop them in there, and Jackie and I will get to them at the end of our conversation. So without further ado, I'm happy to introduce you to Jackie Black, who is, among other things, an artist and an activist. Her series Last Meal is currently on view at the Parish. It was actually originally featured in our 2016 Artist Choose Artist exhibition and then acquired by the museum. Jackie recently moved to Savannah, Georgia earlier this year, but prior to that, she spent many years living full-time on Shelter Island. So welcome, Jackie.
Thank you, Savannah. Thank you for having me and for giving me the chance to talk about this work.
Yeah, we're excited. I'd like to jump right into your Last Meal project, which is a very powerful series of 12 by 12 inch images recreating the last meal requests of 23 individuals on death row in Texas between 1984 and 2001. Jackie, what first inspired you to pursue this project?
Well, Savannah, I grew up in the South. I lived in Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, and Florida from a young age into my early 30s. And what would happen in the South is when the South executes practices capital punishment more than any other part of the US. So what would happen is when someone was going to be executed, the papers would report what they had requested as a last meal. And this image really stuck with me through the years as a very poignant image. And in 2001, I began to research, recreate, and photograph the last meals.
Why did you decide to focus on individuals on death row in Texas specifically?
Well, in my research, I found that Texas had a very extensive compilation of facts around these people that they had executed. So I was able to gather a lot of information from their website. And also Texas seemed to represent very well what the rest of the country was doing in terms of the people, socioeconomic background, race, and level of education.
I see. Yeah, I would also guess that maybe Texas has such good records because the state is responsible for about, I believe, 40% of all executions under capital punishment across the United States.
Yes, there were quite a number of individuals were and are still executed in Texas to this day. Yes.
Victor, if you don't mind just clicking through some of the examples, please. Jackie, how did you choose the 23 individuals?
Well, again, Savannah, they seem to represent a cross section of the people being executed. They all shared. They were either of color, Black in particular, very poorly educated, and or had some kind of mental impairment. Also, I wanted to get a cross section of meals. There were all kinds of things like this very large request for Mexican food. There were, requests for a bag of Jolly Rancher candies. A lot of the food was Southern, obviously, because it was in the South. But lots of different examples of the people.
Yeah, Your selection of 23 individuals is very reflective of both statewide, Texas-wide, and national patterns. I believe 9 of the 23 individuals who you selected are Black, which is roughly 40%. Likewise, in Texas, the Black population in Texas is just around 13%. However, the population on death row that is Black is around 44%.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think absolutely. I think that's true of the US, Savannah. Yeah.
Yeah. So racial discrimination is just one of the many ethical issues surrounding the death penalty and the American criminal justice system at large. Something I personally find really compelling about Last Meal is the subtlety of your messaging. Your voice as an artist isn't, you don't overreach. You don't try to exonerate any of the individuals, nor do the pictures themselves explicitly address any of these ethical or policy issues surrounding the death penalty. That said, you do make the decision to include a fair amount of biographical information on the individuals, which we just spoke about, but their names, their level of education, their age, their occupation, and their last statement where available. And I'm wondering if you could speak a bit about the information you decided to present and the information you decided to omit and why.
Well, I think as an artist, Savannah, my job is to present information, my point of view, in a way that's not didactic. I don't want to tell you how to think about it. So I felt that keeping the images sparse was important, so that we could really just kind of draw the viewer into the subject of a last meal and capital punishment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you were looking through the records in Texas, were the alleged crimes included?
Yes, yes. Yeah, all of these individuals were convicted of murder. And absolutely some of the details were really quite heinous. But whether or not they were guilty or innocent, we don't truly know. And vengeance is not justice. So I definitely feel for victims of crime, but quite frankly, the executed are very often victims of crime of another sort.
Mm-hmm. What, if anything, do you hope to engender in viewers? Is it sympathy, empathy, disgust?
Well, I don't want to tell people how to think about it. I am trying to present it in a way that will make us question what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I am simply presenting a subject which I hope engenders real thought and curiosity about what we do, about what happens in our names throughout the prison industrial complex, which we have now here in the U.S.
Yeah. So a call to action.
Yes, yes.
For your audience to, I guess, educate themselves more about the criminal justice.
Sure. I think we all have a responsibility to know what's going on and to look for the facts. And it's too easy to really just gloss over things when perhaps in our own lives things are good. You know, we have things might be kind of easy for a lot of us and not so much for a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm. What do you say to critics who might perceive Last Meal to be voyeuristic?
Well, I think that voyeurism is very different from just looking at facts. And I think that again, it was a way for me to engage the viewer. I don't think there's anything voyeuristic about uh, um, photography or art as a medium for your own education or thought, or it's really my point of view. And I hope that it just makes people want to know more.
Definitely. I guess, yeah, I don't know. I think that voyeuristic criticism it's something I can understand because I guess sort of like public consumption of others' last meal is sort of a uniquely American thing. But I also think that your job as artist and our job as the institution, I think we have an opportunity and a responsibility right now to frankly remind people that the death penalty still does exist in America when there's so much else going on. Sometimes it's something we forget about. I I personally didn't realize a lot of facts before looking into doing the research for this exhibition. Prior to 2016, it seemed the United States was becoming a less punitive country. Um, then, sort of alongside, I think public support of the death penalty had fallen to the lowest it had been in several decades. Then, it sort of during the 2016 election season, alongside Trump's tough on crime campaign, all three states which had referendums on the death penalty voted in favor of capital punishment. I believe California and Oklahoma, I want to say, voted to keep the death penalty, and Nebraska actually voted to reinstate it. So that was 2016. And then just this year, under the Trump administration, in July, just a few weeks before this exhibition opened at the parish, the Trump administration resumed federal executions, which is a practice that had sort of an informal moratorium for 17 years or more. All that to say that the death penalty is not really a debate of yore. However, it does seem to be largely absent from our country's current movement for racial and social justice against police brutality, against state-sanctioned violence. Um, and I think what we're doing now by presenting last meal is reminding people that frankly the death penalty still does exist and capital murder does occur in this country.
Yeah, Savannah, absolutely. And further, you know, a guilty verdict can and does come down on the innocent. And the US spends way too much money on punishment, not the root causes of poverty, crime, and social inequities. Um, so it's a very, the context, the bigger picture is issues that tie into these issues of social inequality based
Mhm.
on color, mainly on color.
Yeah. Before we move on, I want to speak a bit about the composition of the photographs. The food items are staged against sort of a sterile black background with little extra detail. And it sort of reminds me of the Dutch Vanitas paintings, which are these symbolic works of art showing the transience of life, the futility of pleasure, the certainty of death. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your artistic inspiration.
Well, it's yeah, definitely. I've been influenced by the Dutch still lifes, and I think that's what's so interesting is that they draw you in, and yet everything in them had meaning and had to do with, as you say, the transience of life. So yeah, that was a very big influence on me and how I staged them. I like shooting on black. I like the stark look of it. So yes, Dutch still lifes are a big influence.
Are there any of the 23 individuals whose story or whose picture resonate with you the most?
Well, really, yeah, I think Carla Faye Tucker's meal of the salad and the fruit was kind of your classic woman's request for a meal. I mean, even close to death, she's having kind of a diet meal. So that struck me. And just a lot of the food I could identify with also, because growing up in the South, that was a lot of that food was what I would eat. It just all hits you, really. You know, it's all things that are meant to be consumed and to give you life and sustenance, when in fact it becomes such a bigger thing and has such a deeper meaning.
Yeah. I think I forget which year, but somewhat in the past decade, Texas abolished the privilege to a last meal after
Yes, yeah, yeah.
more than a few inmates requested large meals that they didn't eat.
Well, I actually, you know, that's something that happened when I was doing my research in 2001, Savannah, is I had called the Department of Criminal Justice in Texas just to clarify a couple of the meal descriptions. And the woman told me that actually most people, as you can imagine, don't eat anything. I mean, eat from the small meal to the big meal, no one's eating, you know. Um, yeah. So yeah, Texas is a real kind of still kind of a Wild West kind of mentality, I think, to take that sort of small act of kindness away from someone who's about to be killed.
The composition of the last meal photographs are very similar to another project of yours, the gun show. Could you tell us a little bit about that project?
Well, Savannah, it started out because I grew up around guns in a very respectful way. My father was an Army infantry man, and we all learned to shoot. And the guns, pistols, many of them are really well crafted, beautiful objects. So that was just sort of the start of, well, photographing them on black. And then I realized that they are also something very topical, something that's in the news. We have a serious gun problem in the United States with and a gun debate going on. And I'm quite frankly kind of torn about it and kind of understand both sides. Um, Certainly, I don't think anyone in the lay public should have AK-47s. It is a big controversial issue. But I have to say, ingenuously, I started out just because I think they are beautiful objects. But I do see that they tie in to, again, the Dutch still life and the last meal as being totally contextual with current events. Who has power? Who doesn't? Who uses force? Who doesn't? Who gets to use force? Who doesn't? I mean, these are the kinds of things that they bring up. So they're very loaded images. No pun intended.
Yeah, no, it's nuanced. There's, I guess two sides to everything. And I think that's sort of what you're getting at. Um, is this project contemporaneous with Last Meal, or did one lead to the other?
No. The guns came about in I believe it was 2015, 20 or so. Yeah.
Years afterwards.
Yes, just more exercises in photography. I mean, I love the process. I love shooting in the studio. I love setting up objects. Um,
Did you
so
make
yeah, it was just part of an exercise too in photographing.
did you make these pictures in Shelter Island?
Yes, these were done on Shelter Island. Yeah, in my studio there. Yeah. And they all happen to be very iconic and collectible guns. This particular gun is a 357 Magnum, the same model used in the Dirty Harry film with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, I grew up in New York and I've never touched a gun, so they've always been sort of, scary objects to me personally. That being said, my mom's from Ohio, but she has family in Tennessee and she grew up shooting guns, and I think she could probably, relate a lot more to appreciating the craftsmanship.
Right, I bet she can. Yeah, it's just a matter of course in people's lives, especially down south. My dad grew up on a farm, etc. Um, so yeah, I think Savannah, you might enjoy shooting. It's a very fun sport, target shooting.
So you recently relocated to Savannah, Georgia after several years in the Northeast. Tell us a little bit about that move, and what you're doing now down in Savannah.
Well, it came about because we wanted to be somewhere warmer in winter. That was one of the original rationales for it. But Savannah is a really vibrant and exciting place. It's 51% African American population. There's a very strong and active and engaged politically group of people here. I think we're at a very interesting time in the history of the South, in Georgia in particular. We're coming up on a very important senatorial race. Things are changing. I think my vote matters here a lot more than, say, what was needed in New York. And there's a very, very vibrant art scene. So there's just tons of reasons to be here. And I'm very excited to be a part of the community and try to help African Americans and other people of color move the ball. I mean, we have to help.
Victor, if you don't mind just clicking, thank you. So this is an example of one of your recent projects that I believe you did in Shelter Island and you're continuing in Savannah.
Yeah. Savannah, I started these in Shelter Island around 2016 when so much was going on. The arrest of Sandra Bland, the death of Eric Garner for selling loose cigarettes in New York, the killing of Philando Castile as he was in his car telling the police officer that he had a permit for his gun. He gets killed in front of his girlfriend and the child that's with them in the car. I mean, just heinous occurrences and just my own personal frustration with what was going on. So I wanted to make these tear-offs and place them, they're the kinds of things you would see that, say, advertise an apartment or an object for sale. So you kind of, go move up to them and then they can disarm you. What was the one previous to this one?
The Angela one, I believe.
Oh, Angela Davis. Would you go back to that, Victor?
Victor is our wonderful behind the scenes.
Thank you. There it is. Yeah. Angela Davis has this amazing quote, and it just makes so much sense. I mean, there it is. It's in black and white. That just made so much sense to me. What she had to say about what was going on. And then the Philando Castile, his mother, heartbroken, is just very upset because this cop, shoots him. He's not a threat. And believe me, I understand people who serve in blue and I respect them and appreciate them. But we have a lot of work to do in controlling power, using power in a way that makes sense, not murdering people who are no threat. So that's what this work is about. And I would post them in places around Shelter Island, in public places. And I would go back and check on them in a couple of hours, and they would all have disappeared. So I was very disappointed in that, because it just seemed obvious
Appropriate,
that
right?
people didn't want to confront these issues. It was just not even on the board. We don't even want to think about it, and that is very frustrating to me. And we just have to work on it. This one I love. This is a friend of mine said this to me, African American woman, and yeah, I mean, everybody's working on yoga, but they don't have time to work on racism. People, myself, white people in particular, and we need to look at these issues. And what I love about this one is white people should work on racism the way they work on yoga. And the tear off is namaste, that beautiful, peaceful greeting, and that you use in your yoga, which I believe it translates to, I see your soul. And that's what we all need to do. We need to look into our souls. And that's what I want to happen. We all, myself included, need to work on these things.
It's interesting when you speak about moving to Savannah and feeling that there's so much more potential for you to do good work down there. Your vote actually matters down there compared to New York. And this part of Long Island can certainly be a bubble, but I certainly think of Shelter Island as being a very just accepting, open-minded community. And it's particularly shocking to me that the posters would disappear in Shelter Island.
Yeah, it is. I was shocked by that too. I mean, there's always, I think that our last administration really brought out a lot of hate that was just simmering below the surface. And I'm hopeful that with our next chapter, things are going to be more humane, and we'll get some things done in that.
Have you hung any of these posters since you've been in Savannah?
No, I haven't. Savannah, to tell you the truth, I don't actually go very many places at all due to COVID. But one of these pieces was in a show at a museum, socially distanced, etc. So, but no, I have not posted them out at laundromats, etc. I will work on that again when things open up.
I do know that you've been anonymously sending things to your neighbors, though, right?
Yes, and probably they're not watching, so they'll still be anonymous. But this is something I did here in Savannah. I sent to several addresses and so on. And it is a spin-off of something a group called Four Freedoms is doing. I think they had posted or made a billboard that said, white people do something. I mean, it's a plea for help. My spouse said, Jackie, you really should say please. So I added the please. But yeah, I think we need to try to get at this from every angle. And I just love print pieces. So I thought this would be a good way to do it, would be to send a postcard around.
So on the back, they say, 1, ask yourself if you would like to be a Black person in America. Why or why not? 2, try to understand the advantages of your whiteness. 3, don't say, I don't see color. Of course you do. We all do. But identify as anti-racist. 4, question racist jokes and inappropriate language. 5, educate yourself and talk to friends and family members about how we can make a better world for all. 6, advocate for an equitable society, both locally and nationally. 7, vote for justice reform. 8, take cues from and respect Black leadership. 9, support Black businesses and banks. 10, watch the film 13th.
Yeah, I thought that these were just really simple ways to try to move the ball forward. the film 13th is a real eye opener. I mean, there's a lot all of us can learn by watching this great film. It is on Netflix, and the name of the filmmaker escapes me at the moment. We'll get back to that. But yeah, just some simple steps. There you go.
Ava DuVernay. Thank you,
Yeah.
Corinne.
Ava DuVernay. Thank you, Corinne.
All right, well, we have some questions coming into the Q&A. I think, are you ready to start addressing those?
Yes, let's do it.
Someone would like to know if you own these guns.
I do not. Thankfully, New York has a very stringent gun ownership policy, which I respect. These guns belong to a friend of mine who has permits and has quite a wonderful collection.
They look, and some of them look antique.
Well, what is meant by antique? Revolvers that I don't know that they're antique. Are they over 30 years old? Some of them might be. Some of them may be, yes.
Someone else would like to know how the subtlety between the images creates their stark power. I guess that's in reference to Last Meal.
Not sure I understand that question.
I think, well, I can take a stab at it. I think because all of the pictures are portrayed against the same background and sort of, they're composed similarly. However, and some of the meals are the same, certain food items like Coca-Cola or fried chicken come up time and time again. And then, but then some others are really quite different, such as the request for a bag of Jolly Ranchers, or a jar of dill pickles, or a request for the last meal to be donated to a homeless person, request denied. I think maybe the question's getting at, well, I would just say that I think the series is very powerful as a whole, and their power comes from being together in a series.
Multiples, yeah. Multiples are often powerful. It's like when you see an artist's work, say a retrospective, it's so amazing to see a life's work or even 10 years of work all together in one place. It has so much more power to see a volume of work.
Were any of your subjects aware of your work?
Oh gosh, no, they were all dead.
Yeah.
They were gone. They were long gone. Yeah. I never traveled. No, I didn't pursue that end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it would be, if it's their last meal, then that's the last thing there is. So.
Yeah.
The photographer has a terrific eye. Was her artistic vision developed in art school or developed on her own?
Oh, well, I think a life, a life of work. You just the years of doing it. I mean, a lot of people contributed to my eye. Thank you for that compliment. But I think art school definitely helped a lot. It helped push me to really look at things more critically. So I would say a lot. My father was actually a pretty good photographer, and he gave me my first cameras, and so he kind of started me off on it. But I just always loved the process. And then just going back to school really pushed me forward too. And also I sorry, I learn a lot just from looking at images. We're surrounded by them, so they're everywhere. And I think the tropes of advertising have also been an influence on me.
Did you study exclusively photography in art school, or did you have a a wider ranging practice that you
I
then.
definitely had a wider range. Did some painting, some sculpting, et cetera, ceramics. I just was naturally drawn to the photography and the equipment and the lighting and the looking and the process was always very engaging. Um, and over the years, of course, it's changed. Now I'm doing all digital, but I think the silver gelatin printing and film was a great foundation. And I'm hopeful that it's still being taught in schools because it's really, as they say, it's a great foundation.
When did you make the switch from film to digital?
That happened, I believe, probably 1997 or 8, I went digital. Yeah.
What do you use to shoot the last meal photographs?
Oh, that I used a Nikon D1X, which is a single lens reflex digital Nikon, and a 3 light setup, strobe lights in a very small apartment.
Um, Sorry, there's more questions coming in. I didn't realize I could scroll down. Anonymous attendee would like to know, what is the next project you are looking to pursue?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, there's a highway that runs from Tupelo, Mississippi to Nashville, Tennessee, and it's called the Natchez Trace. And it's this beautiful historical, it was a trail, now it's a 2-lane roadway, which was a place where settlers and pioneers and traders and Indians used this, Native Americans used it to travel. And on this route of about 440 miles, there are national park signs whose purported facts are just so erroneous. They're all about how the Native Americans liked giving away their land, were very simple and didn't understand contracts and didn't mind being shuttled off of their land and being moved to Oklahoma, for instance. And it's just outrageous that these signs are still in existence in this century. So I'd like to go back to that place and document these signs and look at the real story, try to get that out there, and then further along to try to get the Park Service to update their signage. It's just like it's the 50s or something.
Did the Park Service put up those signs? Or
Yes, they're a U.S. Park Service, very large wayside signage. It's extraordinary, and
believable?
wow, you know what? I think it's Native American Day or something. So
Yeah, November is Native American month.
so yeah, that's the next thing I think, and I'm not sure how visually it's going to be, if it's going to be documentary or maybe there's a way I can present it with a little more stealth. I don't know yet, but I just feel like it's something that needs to, it's pretty outrageous.
Would you revisit and add to the last meal or any of your projects in the future?
Sure. Yeah, I would absolutely. Nothing's on the table right now for that, but let's hope that capital punishment itself becomes an antique. And maybe we would look back at these as just some kind of messed up history, instead of something that's still going on.
On the one hand, you say last meal is not didactic, but it seems to me that you have and your work inclines us towards anti-capital punishment. Um, you can't say you want the viewer to come away without empathy for those on death row, can you?
Oh no, I think there's you would have empathy because we identify as human beings. We're looking at a meal. Another human being is about to be killed. Yes, there's definitely empathy. Um, but you could also just say, who cares? I don't care if they're going to be killed. Or you could say,
They deserve it.
they
Or
did it. Let's kill them. But that's not the point. It's to look for innocence misses the point of it.
yeah. I think uh, when we say the work's not didactic, I think the artists, yeah, it's hard to imagine it's, whoever created the images would be pro capital punishment. Um, but I do think it doesn't. I don't think the project kind of beats you over the head with the reasons in which capital punishment is bad. I think what Jackie spoke to earlier, her goal is to activate people to do the research for themselves.
I would agree with that assessment. Thank you, Savannah.
Let's see. Have you ever worked in commercial photography? And if so, do you feel there's a dichotomy between that work and your art?
What was the first part of that question? Have I ever done commercial photography?
Yeah, have you ever worked in commercial photography?
Uh, well, I had a very sort of short-lived career, if you want to call it a career, but um, it seemed to me that it wasn't an area that I wanted to pursue because it was representing a product. So I didn't want to represent a product and be beholden to creating an aura around a product or consumption. Dichotomy with my work, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to address that. Um, of course, I'm influenced by consumer photography. So maybe, is that what the question is about?
I think more so. Um, I think because you didn't really work in commercial photography all that much, then there probably isn't much of a dichotomy between what work you did and your artwork. But maybe there is a dichotomy between the projects that we spoke about towards the end of the presentation. The dichotomy between your more, I guess, activism work versus your artwork.
Uh-huh. Yes, well, I suppose text can immediately be seen as more activist. And I'm definitely, it's clearly I'm becoming more pointed in uh, my goal. Um, and I think that has to do with just feeling so outraged and frustrated about what's going on, about the inequities in this country. Um, so that just is what's been at the forefront of my mind lately. But art takes many forms, um, beauty, painting, landscapes, gorgeous, all kinds of gorgeousness or ugliness. But it's there for you to take meaning from as you will, as you can.
What was the most revealing aspect of the research process for you? Would you say it was the driving force for the direction of your work?
All right, are we talking about last meal?
I believe we're talking about last meal.
What was the most surprising thing that I had found out during the research?
Most revealing.
Revealing. Oh, well, clearly, I didn't know that much about capital punishment when I started the research. What was most revealing was the backgrounds of the people executed. Very poorly educated, low levels of education, generally quite poor, and usually of color. And that was the most revealing aspect for me. you really don't think about these things when you're not of that world, not in that world, so to speak.
Yeah, the racial discrimination, it rears its head in other forms too. Even if it is a white person on death row, if they're being tried for murder, I'm not sure exactly what the statistic is, but they're far more likely to be tried for murder if the victim of the murder is a white person versus a person of color.
Yes, that is true, Savannah. I mean, we're just confronted every day with so much pain in every way. It is on us to really try to make change. It is on our plates. It is in our hands. Um, and I feel very optimistic. I think with the recent election, etc., I think we're going to make some progress.
I think so too. Maybe that's a good optimistic note to leave off on.
Well, thank you, Savannah, and thank you, people,
I
for
appreciate it.
attending.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you to our sponsors, Bank of America, um, and Sandy and Stephen Pearlbinder for making our Friday nights possible. Um, we really appreciate it, Jackie. Thank you.
Thank you.